Direct marketing, that implies a direct conversation to potential customers. One way marketers try to do that is with email personalization. We're going to share some research about that right now. Hi, I'm Daniel Burstein, Director of Editorial Content at Marketing Sherpa. We are here at the bastion of direct marketing, the DMA's annual event, and I'm joined now by John Powell, the Senior Manager of Executive Research and Development at McLabs Institute. Thanks for joining us, John.
Thanks, Daniel.
So John, I'm interviewing a lot of the speakers here at and this is a unique interview because John and I work together.
Right, yeah.
McLabs Institute is the parent company of Marketing Sherpa, so it'll be a great, interesting Marketing Sherpa chart of the week from some of the research our parent research organization is conducting. And to find this research, let's start talking about the methodology used to discover what really works in email personalization. Can you tell us about that?
So imagine somebody looking at every single case study in Marketing Sherpa that dealt with personalization, customization, that used any of those terms. Imagine just searching the entire database from back in 2001 all the way up into present, and then taking all of the case studies in the McLabs kind of primary research database, where we actually had control of the data, and combining that kind of analysis to look for patterns. That's essentially what we did. And if we've got a slide that kind of shows 100 creative samples, the brand side studies, controlled experiments, 300 plus pages of data. I mean, it was grueling. It took at least 20 to 30 hours just to go through one time. But that's kind of the approach that we took, and we just really were just focusing on patterns. Is there anything that we could learn? Is there any kind of common denominator that we could share with marketers to help them increase the effectiveness of how they go about personalization or what they do?
Well, let's take a look at some of the data. So what did you discover about email personalization?
So it was really interesting. One of the first things that I wanted to look at was installation, because when everybody thinks of personalization, they think of perhaps automation, right? And of course, that's like the big dream, right? I want to personalize so that I can automate so that everybody can feel like they have this one-to-one experience. But in order to do that, I have to have some kind of great technology. Well, people often think, or I find that marketers think, that automation is basically the key to success. But what I discovered, and if you take a look at the chart that we've got here, is that when you cut it up by ROI from low to high and from installation complexity, simple to complex, you actually start to see some really good results without the automation. Which is even more surprising is that there were some highly automated cases and campaigns that comparatively achieved a very moderate, low ROI, which makes me wonder, is automation really the key? Or is it more or less about how you connect with the customer? All right, so you can imagine that I didn't stop here. I saw this area. If you got this slide here, you can actually see the green outline of this really kind of sweet spot that you want to be in, where you can achieve this great ROI without investing a ton in installation. Now, what was even more interesting, if you go to the next slide, is that I found there are like three basically tactics. And what's really interesting is that the more that you use these tactics in your campaigns, the more potential your ROI goes back up. So if you were to back up, let's just say 2 clicks in the slides. Let's go back to this one. Go back one more. Now you see the ones on the bottom, they only used one tactic. If you go to the guys in the middle, they started to use 2 of those, and the ones on top actually used 3. Now you can imagine those that automated those 3 tactics got the greatest gain. But for those that actually used all 3 and didn't necessarily do automation, they did maybe simple segmentation, they were still able to achieve significant results. I mean, we're actually talking about changing the just daily total revenue. I mean, that impactful.
Okay, well, let's take a look at what those factors were.
So that's always the question, right? So if there are 3 things, what are the 3 things that people are doing in order to get more results, or how to achieve success in personalization? And initially, the layman's terms that I would use is I noticed that they were really, especially in the emails, they were being very intentional about highlighting 3 things. About acknowledging a recent relationship that they had with the customer. So imagine like if they had been a customer and they hadn't been there for a while, they actually acknowledged them as that person and not just pretend like they knew them well or didn't know them well. So they actually acknowledge, maybe they're a new customer, they acknowledge that. They basically acknowledge that customer's status or relationship status with them. That was one thing that they did. The second thing that they did, that the most successful did, was that they actually took in and acknowledged a recent, almost kind of captured interest. So imagine if you've got a list and you've collected, or maybe you've been able to observe some things about your list and the things that they're interested in. There was one case study. It's my favorite. It's a company called Doggy Loot, and they had this great idea. They said, what would happen if we actually forced everybody to give us 2 pieces of information before going to their site? They're kind of a flash sale site, so the motivation was a little bit higher. One piece of information was the email, but the second piece was the size of their dog. You know what they did with that? Well, they combined that piece of information, the size of their dog, right? And we're able to give them specific deals on, like, say, large dog deals, medium, small dog deals, instead of just dog deals. They had a significant increase in response. The third thing, so we talked about 2. We talked about kind of acknowledging a recent relationship and then a recent interest. The third thing was a recent event. So this is kind of a standard that most people already get. This is like cart abandonment. So imagine that you saw somebody, they were in the cart and they abandoned, and you just, boom, you send them an email right after. Of course, you're going to get their attention, especially the sooner that you send it. But isn't just limited to, say, cart abandonment. It could be other things. It could be searching your site and you have a way to see that they read a recent article, or that they actually accessed a certain product page. If you just simply acknowledged that, just acknowledged it, just said it, did nothing more than just said it, the customer would respond. Which made me wonder, why in the world would it be this easy to get such a significant result? And my guess is that customers are seriously hungry for just personalized communication. They're so hungry, but even the slightest little bit of acknowledgement, that's not creepy, of course, right? The serious bit of acknowledgement that's not creepy is going to really just increase their motivation and increase their likelihood of response.
That's interesting. So some great takeaways for marketers. When you're building your lists, it's very easy to try to make the friction as low as possible to get a whole bunch of emails on there. But maybe it's worthwhile to ask for a little bit more information so you can personalize those emails.
Yeah.
And then also, too, I know we worry sometimes about privacy concerns with customers, but it might be worthwhile testing a few examples where you mention, hey, we know how you're interested in our site, and I assume providing some value based on that interest, right?
Right. And I've read there are a lot of other charts out there from companies doing research. eMarketer, of course, puts together a lot of them, and there was a chart on people receiving like personalized offers via mobile. They don't mind it, right? As long as they actually enjoy it, but there's a line that you cross when it starts to get creepy. So I would encourage marketers to not be afraid, but to actually try and get some of that information and turn it into something that benefits the customer, or even something that just makes them feel like you know them. Because that in of itself is enough to command a significant response, or just a difference in response.
Yeah, I think that's the key right there. You just said something that benefits the customer. So if you're using the data to benefit the customer, every customer wants that. Hey, we know you're interested in this sort of thing. If you're just using the customer in a way that seems to manipulate them, overly sell to them, or again, seem creepy, that's probably a step too far.
Right. So testing, of course, and you want to work your way in, iterate your way in, but overall, there's much to be gained, and it's not necessarily through automation. You don't have to have an automation. You don't have to have great technology. You just need to have simple segmentation, and you just need to think like a human. Acknowledge them, acknowledge the relationship that you have with them, acknowledge something that they're interested in and it's recent, and then acknowledge a recent action that they have taken, and then combine that into a message that benefits the customer. And I promise you, you're likely to find a significant difference in behavior. Of course, test it.
Absolutely test it, yeah. Well, thank you very much, John. And thank you for watching. If you're looking for more ideas on how you can benefit the customer, you can see many more interviews from Adnan at marketingsherpa.com/DMA.